Most betrayals start with these small signs. The biggest mistake people make is believing betrayal begins the moment someone lies to them. It doesn't. By the time the betrayal happens, you've already ignored dozens of warning signs. You felt them, you noticed them, and you talked yourself out of every single one. What you're about to hear will change the way you see everyone around you, not because it makes you paranoid, but because it makes you finally pay attention. Betrayal is never sudden. It only feels sudden because you weren't watching closely enough, or because some part of you didn't want to see it. People rarely wake up one day and decide to hurt you. What actually happens is slower, quieter, and far more calculated than that, even when the person doing it isn't consciously calculating anything at all. Machiavelli understood that appearances often protect hidden intentions. Long before someone acts against you, they've already begun rehearsing the version of themselves that will make the betrayal feel justified, or invisible, or simply your fault. Think about the last time someone disappointed you in a way that felt like it came out of nowhere. Now go back further. There was a moment, small, forgettable, easy to explain away, where something shifted. Maybe they got quieter around you. Maybe their excitement for your wins felt thinner than it used to. You probably dismissed it because you trusted them. At the time, it felt harmless. Looking back, that's the moment everything changed. This is the first truth you need to sit with. People don't betray you because they suddenly become evil. They betray you because loyalty stops being worth more to them than whatever they think they can gain by abandoning it. That's not a moral failing you can always predict. It's a calculation, often unconscious, running quietly beneath every interaction you have with them. A constant, invisible weighing of what you're worth to them against what something else might be worth instead. Sudden emotional distance is usually the first sign, and almost everyone misreads it. You notice someone pulling back, shorter replies, less eye contact, a strange flatness in their voice, and instead of asking what changed, you assume it's you. You assume you're overthinking it. You assume they're busy or stressed or having a bad week. But people rarely reveal betrayal all at once. It leaks out first as distance, because distance is safer for them than honesty. Getting close to you again would mean facing what they're starting to feel: guilt, resentment, or the discomfort of no longer wanting what you offer. Here's what almost nobody notices. Fake enthusiasm is often more dangerous than distance. When someone becomes performatively supportive, congratulating you a little too loudly, agreeing with you a little too quickly, it's frequently a sign they're compensating for something they don't actually feel. Genuine loyalty doesn't need to announce itself. It shows up quietly, consistently, without needing an audience. The moment someone's support starts sounding like a performance, ask yourself who they're performing for. Sometimes the answer is you, because they need you to keep believing in something that's already gone. Gets even more subtle. Watch how small lies start to come easier to someone. Not the big lies, those come later if they come at all. The small ones. A minor exaggeration, a convenient omission, a story that doesn't quite line up but isn't worth confronting. Each small lie lowers the cost of the next one. This is how people rehearse dishonesty without ever calling it that. By the time a real betrayal happens, they've already practiced the mechanics 100 times in ways too minor for you to catch. Notice, too, when someone becomes unusually curious about your plans, your finances, your relationships, your next moves, without offering the same openness about their own. Genuine closeness is reciprocal. Information flows both ways. But when someone starts collecting details about your life while carefully withholding theirs, they're not building intimacy. They're building leverage, even if they'd never describe it that way to themselves. Machiavelli warned that people rarely abandon self-interest unless loyalty benefits them more, and information is one of the quietest forms of self-interest there is. This is the moment most people completely misread: hidden competitiveness disguised as encouragement. Someone who claims to be in your corner but who somehow always finds a reason your success isn't quite as impressive as it looks. A compliment that arrives with a quiet correction attached. That's great, I'm surprised it worked out, honestly. These backhanded compliments aren't accidents. They're small attempts to keep you slightly smaller than them because your growth has started to feel like their loss. Pay close attention to how someone responds to your success when no one else is watching. Less celebration than they used to show. A pause before the congratulations. A subtle redirection of the conversation back to themselves. Envy rarely announces itself directly. It hides inside timing, inside tone, inside what's left unsaid. The people who are truly loyal to you feel your wins as their own. The people who are quietly resenting you feel your wins as a threat to the story they've been telling themselves about their own place in your life. Inconsistent loyalty is another pattern that hides in plain sight. Someone who defends you fiercely in your presence but stays suspiciously silent when you're not there to hear it. Someone who becomes a different person depending on who else is in the room. This isn't just social flexibility. Everyone adjusts slightly to context. This is something deeper. A person whose loyalty depends entirely on audience, which means it was never loyalty to you in the first place. It was loyalty to how they wanted to be seen. There's another version of this pattern that's even harder to catch. The person who becomes someone entirely different depending on who's standing next to them. Warm and generous around people whose opinion matters to them. Cool and dismissive around people who don't earn them anything socially. You might notice it first as a strange inconsistency you can't quite name. The way they laugh differently in one group than another. The way their opinions seem to shift depending on the room. This isn't just adaptability. Adaptability bends without breaking. What you're witnessing instead is a person with no fixed center. Someone whose kindness toward you was never a value, only a setting, adjustable the moment it stops being useful. Frequent excuses are how people buy time while they quietly decide what you're still worth to them. One excuse is nothing. A pattern of excuses for canceled plans, broken promises, small commitments quietly abandoned, is someone testing how much they can take from the relationship without giving anything back. And if you don't push back, they learn something important, that your boundaries are negotiable. That's when the testing escalates. Testing your boundaries is rarely dramatic at first. It's a small joke at your expense, a minor promise broken, a comment that crosses a line, delivered with just enough plausible deniability that calling it out would make you seem like the unreasonable one. This is where it becomes almost invisible, the gradual lowering of your confidence. Not through insults, those would be too obvious, too easy to identify and reject. Through subtlety instead, a joke that quietly diminishes you, a comment about your judgment disguised as concern. Over time, you start second-guessing yourself in ways you never used to. You start needing their approval more than you need your own. This is not an accident. A person who has begun turning against you often needs you weaker before they need you gone, because a confident version of you is far harder to manipulate and far more likely to notice what's happening. Turning jokes into subtle disrespect works the same way. Humor is one of the most effective disguises for hostility because it comes with built-in deniability. If you react, you're told you can't take a joke. If you don't, the disrespect continues, slightly worse each time. Machiavelli recognized that power often reveals character more than hardship, and few things reveal character as clearly as how someone treats you when they believe it can be laughed off. Withholding information is a quieter cousin of lying. Someone doesn't have to say anything false to deceive you. They simply need to leave out the parts that would change how you feel or what you'd decide if you knew them. This is how people create plausible deniability long before they need it, carefully avoiding direct lies while still steering you away from the truth. When the betrayal eventually surfaces, they'll tell you, technically, they never lied. And in the narrowest sense, they didn't. They just made sure you never had enough information to see clearly. Here's what almost nobody notices until it's too late, becoming unusually agreeable right before acting against you. A person who has been resistant, distant, or difficult suddenly becomes warmer, easier, more available right before a decision that will hurt you. This isn't a coincidence, and it isn't a change of heart. It's often a form of emotional cover, whether consciously chosen or not, designed to make the coming betrayal feel less believable to you and less guilty to them. You'll ask yourself later, but they were being so nice right before, how could they have already decided? That question answers itself once you understand the pattern. Watch closely for people who ask for your trust while becoming less transparent with theirs. "Just trust me" is one of the most common phrases used by people who are actively giving you fewer and fewer reasons to. Real trust doesn't need to be requested. It's built through consistency, transparency, and time. When someone starts demanding trust instead of earning it, they're usually asking you to stop paying attention at the exact moment you should be paying the most. And this is perhaps the most painful pattern of all, weaponizing vulnerability later. Someone learns your fears, your insecurities, the soft places you rarely show anyone, and for a while, that closeness feels like the deepest form of intimacy you've ever known. But vulnerability shared with the wrong person doesn't stay sacred. It becomes ammunition. The same fear you once whispered to them in trust becomes the exact thing they know will hurt you most, precisely when they decide to use it. Quiet resentment is the emotional foundation beneath almost every betrayal you'll ever experience. It rarely erupts. It accumulates in passive-aggressive comments, in selective honesty, in the slow withdrawal of warmth that once came so easily. Selective honesty is especially easy to miss because it wears the costume of integrity. The person tells you the truth constantly, just never all of it, and never the parts that would cost them something. They'll admit to the small mistake so you don't go looking for the larger one. They'll volunteer an inconvenient detail precisely because it makes the convenient lie beside it look more believable. This is why so many people feel blindsided by betrayal that, in hindsight, was building for months or even years. The resentment was never hidden. It was simply quiet enough that you mistook silence for peace. But here's what almost nobody tells you about resentment. It doesn't need a reason that would hold up under scrutiny. It doesn't need you to have done anything wrong at all. Sometimes resentment grows simply because your life moved forward while theirs stood still, and standing next to your progress became a quiet, daily reminder of everything they hadn't done. You didn't cause it. You just happened to be visible. Emotional manipulation through guilt deserves its own understanding, because it's one of the most effective tools people use to keep you compliant while they're already pulling away, making you feel responsible for their moods, making you feel like your needs are burdens, making you feel, when you finally raise a concern, like you're imagining things too sensitive, too suspicious, too much. This is one of the clearest signs that someone already knows what they're doing is wrong. They wouldn't need to make you doubt your own perception unless your perception was dangerously close to the truth. Most people don't betray because they suddenly become evil. They betray because somewhere along the way, envy outweighed admiration, or fear outweighed loyalty, or opportunity outweighed conscience. Self-interest is not always cruelty. Sometimes it's simply survival, dressed up as circumstance. But understanding why someone betrays you doesn't mean you have to excuse it. It means you finally understand that it was never about you being unworthy of loyalty. It was about what they valued more than loyalty itself. The next behavior is where betrayal quietly becomes inevitable. The moment someone stops seeing you as a person and starts seeing you as a resource, an obstacle, or a threat. Once that shift happens internally, everything else, the distance, the lies, the testing, the resentment, is simply the visible symptom of a decision that's already been made somewhere beneath the surface. Machiavelli didn't believe people were inherently good or evil. He believed people acted according to what benefited them, and that understanding this was not cynicism, it was clarity. The people who hurt you were rarely monsters. They were simply people who eventually valued something more than they valued you. None of this means you should live in suspicion of everyone around you. That's not wisdom. That's exhaustion wearing wisdom's clothing. The goal was never to make you distrust people. The goal is to make you trust your own perception again, to stop dismissing the small, quiet signals your instincts have been sending you long before your mind was willing to listen. Most people spend years training themselves out of their own intuition. Every time you felt something was off and talked yourself out of it, you taught yourself, a little more, to distrust the one instrument that was actually working correctly. The discomfort you felt in that conversation, the pause before you laughed at that joke, the small, nagging sense that something didn't add up, even when you couldn't explain why. That wasn't paranoia. That was pattern recognition, operating faster than your conscious mind could keep up with. Learning to notice these signs isn't about becoming colder toward the people in your life. It's about finally listening to the part of you that was paying attention all along. Betrayal cannot always be prevented. Some people will decide, for reasons that have nothing to do with your worth, that loyalty to you no longer serves them. But recognizing the small signs, the distance before the silence, the fake enthusiasm before the indifference, the testing before the disrespect, gives you something far more valuable than protection. It gives you back your peace, your clarity, your self-respect. It means the next time someone shows you who they're becoming, you won't need them to finish the sentence. The people who betray you rarely change overnight. They simply stop hiding who they were becoming.